Hello and welcome to Lands Unknown. My name is Will, and today in this live, we are going to be developing more of the ancient ancestral Zaaleans. So we're going to keep building on culture. Maybe we'll do anthropium. I don't know. I wasn't planning on it, but we always could. Hello, Writer 2. Oh, and today is also Pride weekend here. So happy Pride to everyone. Hey, Kate. Oh yeah, I gotta. And also, I think all of the panels and presentations from SpecCon came out. So if you haven't checked out all of those, that is something that you could do if you need more world building in your week. Hello, Auroral Anomaly. Anomaly. Oh my goodness. Auroral Anomaly. Some of y'all have tongue twister names, or maybe they're just tongue twisters for me. Yeah. I know in Canada, I mean, in some places, I think it's just June, which is Pride Month, but up here we have Pride Season. So, all right, got that in the way. All right, so last time we focused a lot on the masks and building of the masks. We also talked about the method that I tend to flow through, where you start by gathering your references, and you can gather more references over time. I think, engaging with your references, finding new references is quite important. From there, you want to build up the basics, right? You want to have your foundations set. And, I don't want this to seem deterministic or kind of railroaded. I think in my first one in this series, I went back and looked very closely at some of the contemporary research on Neanderthals and Denisovans and kind of what we can parse out about different Paleolithic human cultures from the material evidence. Uh, you can come to all different conclusions based on that information, and even Paleolithic people were not a monolith. I mean, different groups practice different things, but what's important about establishing those basics and especially like relying on those um, references for building those up, especially for societies that are quite different than ones that your readers will be, or your audience, I should say, your audience should be familiar with or thinks they're familiar with, is that you need to do more work to kind of hammer that down. And then once you build up these basics where you have social organization, political organization, these sorts of things, you can start going between tangible and intangible culture. And what's important about that stuff is that these things mutually support each other. So the intangible elements of culture, so, institutions, rituals, organizations, ideas, certain practices, they are structured by all of the tangible culture that you have. And when you build up these things, they are going to inform and shape your basics. And by having this sort of iterative workflow, you can build something that's, unique, even though you're drawing on a variety of, you know, references that are available to more or less everyone. And I think in the World Building Festival, uh, not the World Building Festival, sorry, at SpecCon, there was a SpecCon panel at the end, and they asked a couple of questions. And some of those questions, folks referenced me in them. So at some point, I may see if I can add anything to some of those. And today, I did want to really focus on the rituals and the relations. So, kind of giving some form to the social and the political organization, which we started to do last time, specifically talking about the masks, um, which I originally developed as neat features to kind of make their silhouette a bit more distinct, but also to deal with the very material problem of having dragons who spit toxins at you. And so having these masks where you're putting the eyes further up were definitely helpful in that. Though I'm sure there could be different mask shapes, different ways to wear them that I could experiment with. But I do like this kind of like tall rectangular shape on top of the head. I suppose when I start drawing more people. Oh, and speaking of drawing, yeah, I've done the vast majority of the art. I think I just have some small edits to make for the next video, and I have finished the vast majority of the script. So I believe I will start recording either later today or tomorrow. So that'll be good. All right, so while I was flipping around, we do have some rituals that we haven't really fleshed out yet. We've got rituals associated with adulthood. That's how people get their masks. Oh yeah, Rock says Shikari. Rock says Shikari. Excellent. Welcome, welcome. We confirmed after the fact about the pronunciation of the X character there. So we do have some rituals associated with adulthood. We also have daily ritual practices associated with, let's do that. Still getting used to obsidian. Oh, okay. Let's stop it from making banging noises here. I'm not sure if you can hear the banging noises. Good evening, Bib. All right, so for the intangible culture here, we are going to 1, 2, 3 rituals, and we're going to outline what rituals that we have so far. So we have, or that we've sort of highlighted. One of those rituals would be the mask giving ritual. And this is something that happens to essentially inaugurate adulthood, to sort of show that someone is now an adult, sort of coming of age ritual. And then there is that daily ritual for leaving the sort of area under the tarp. Which is sort of a, the symbolic move from, sort of, I guess, the domestic, though that's not really how they'd frame it. And it's primarily done when you're going hunting or foraging or something like that. And in that, people who are not leaving are going to be wearing the masks of those. And let me know if you could hear my phone vibrated. I am waiting for a call, so I'll probably take the break when the call comes. But I don't want it to be distracting. I may have to put it on a different surface. And the people who are not leaving include older folks, so elders. Let's just do that. And these are elders who don't have the capacity to actually engage in subsistence, because in many hunting and gathering communities, people who were older were more experienced, and they tended to be more productive So if someone's, in their 50s or 60s, they are probably going to be a very productive hunter and or gatherer. We also mentioned people with disabilities. And I think that's important because people in disabilities in various Paleolithic communities have been found, of course, in the archaeological record. And what's really interesting about that is that um, these people were parts of their family, like, they're part of the family, part of the community. They were taken care of by their community members. People who were injured while hunting or in violence with other people were taken care of. Their wounds were able to heal, and they were able to live long lives. So it's important not to forget those sorts of folks, or to portray Paleolithic peoples as like brutish, like a sort of Hobbesian kind of situation. Um, Life could certainly be violent and short, but the people were often engaging in a lot of intra-group like solidarity and mutual aid and providing support. We also have people who are injured or sick. And within that, what I think we could also include injured or sick people who are, bleeding. So people who are menstruating, for example. I can spell, right? I think so. Nope, no, I cannot spell. There we go, missing an R. Oh yeah, and then of course, as well as, and then we can include pregnancy as well, because uh, people who are pregnant can continue to engage in the same level of um, athleticism and activities as they were prior to becoming pregnant, though, at a certain point, either things like morning sickness and stuff like that, or the discomfort of moving around when you're very late in the term could, become a bit of an issue when hunting and foraging or those sorts of things. So again, this is the people who are not leaving is more about capability and capacity than anything else, though in later cultures that could obviously change. Let's make that an M dash there. All right. There we go. Depending on symptoms, people who are not leaving are going to be wearing the masks, representing Dovian, right? Non-Dovian communities. So yes, they're going to be wearing these masks. These masks are going to be in the sort of liminal space. We've decided that there's going to be under the tarps, there's going to be an inner area. There's going to be wooden posts that sort of separate this inner area. There's going to be an intermediate area, which is going to be under the tarps. I do have, let me Let me move that over. I was doing some artwork. I'm not particularly happy with it at the moment. I may go back and redo it again. Well, it's kind of in the process. All right, how do I do this? Share JPEG, Obsidian, and import into Volt. Done. Untitled artwork. Oh, there it is. Boom. All right. So just the base colors are kind of down. I haven't spent too much time building it up. So we can see from this that, so we're going to have this tarp. We have these wooden posts on the outside. I imagine that, they could have outside barriers. Like you could have pieces of, you could have sections of leather that you can apply to the outside of these as well. So they could come down. That may be important for the winter, may be important for the rainy season. So we're going to have these posts around here. And then in this area between the inner layer, where we have the sections kind of separating it out, and between this outer layer, that is where the ritual is going to happen. And let's get back here. Are we going to see Calvade in any cultures? Yes, I certainly think we will. Or we may see some sort of similar institution. And so I don't know if I pronounced that properly. Kuvad. Okay, there we go. Kuvad. Wonderful. So is going to be some Kuvad. I think there should be Kuvad to some degree in these cultures. I think it may be more. I mean, there are hunter gatherers and horticulturalists who practice Kuvad. I personally tend to associate it more with more settled groups, or not more settled groups, but groups that have moved more into horticulture and stuff like that. So Kuvad is when is also known as like a sympathetic pregnancy, and this is when the partners of pregnant people imitate the symptoms of pregnancy. Generally, there are similar institutions, frequently taboos, in cultures as well, where the partner of a pregnant person, or even the partner of a menstruating person, is not allowed to, go hunting, for example. And these taboos are usually associated with, like, if you are bleeding, for menstruating, for example, like if you're bleeding, the animal will smell you. And some of the logics for some of these groups, often, the women and their partners will be in a separate living, in the same living arrangement, separate from other people. It's like, well, if you're living with that person, then you will also, smell like blood, for example. That's why you cannot go out hunting. So that's an example of that kind of taboo with menstruation. But this also happens with pregnancy as well. And while there are these rationalizations for it that cause these taboos, um, there is also the practical impact of it, where it's like you can't go hunting because you should be taking care of your partner, right? Like you should be helping them because they are, you know, menstruating or they are pregnant, right? So you should be helping them out. Therefore, you should not be hunting either. Uh, I think that would work out pretty well for the AAZ folks. I don't know if they're going to be experiencing Kuvad, um, but uh, I think they should. Where can we go? Just institutions, probably. Just generic. Um, I think I mentioned that last time. Uh, and I think I'll just extend it more broadly. I think that's where we will sort of we can extend that logic. I do think we are going to have some cultures that are like explicitly practicing Kuvad, because I think it is a very interesting institution. And Kuvad can also be associated with labor, for example. So um, when the person giving birth is going through labor and experiencing labor pains, their partner will also uh, imitate or engage in or experience, those labor pains. I mean, sometimes it can be sort of an ecstatic experience or what have you. Um, but it is, and it is often associated with these sorts of taboos. You always get mixed up between Kuvad and Cotard's walking corpse syndrome. Oh my goodness. Ah, yes, the belief that someone walking around uh, is dead, and they're putrefying as they're walking around. Yes, 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 yes. And I think there is a medical condition linked to Kuvad as well, which is the Kuvad syndrome, which is the. I think some people would argue. I think in some case it may be psychosomatic, but there also may be some biological uh, causes to it, and that includes like the labor pains, disturbed sleep, weight gain. Like, there are a bunch of things that are associated with Kuvad syndrome. I'm more knowledgeable about the practice. And I don't think we should discount the the bodily experiences of people who are practicing different sort of social worlds and things. Though, like when I even see an inanimate thing experience like pain, I don't know. When I see another person, like if I see them bump their leg into a chair, I will sort of reflexively go like, oh, like, I will, sort of like compassionately sort of feel that impact or understand that experience. And if you have a institution in your culture that validates that, and sort of provides I don't know, this experience of maybe solidarity between partners, and that really significant experience of pregnancy and giving birth, then that may heighten it as well. Though do I do remember reading, especially for some horticulturalists that practice kuvad, um, the men, uh, you know, experience the birthing pains and like these sorts of things, and they have to rest for several days. Meanwhile, the woman who just gave birth is back like doing domestic labor. So kuvad is not always um, an egalitarian institution, though I do believe that it starts there. So often you can take these sorts of things and make them into a sort of hierarchical situation. All right. And so for the coming of age ritual, the masks, I would like to say that these masks, the the daily sort of masks, are going to be something that's passed down, and they're probably repaired or remade, but these are going to be more tied to the territory. Meanwhile, the masks that are going to be handed down for adulthood in the coming age ritual are probably going to be clan based. So these will probably be made by the mother. Because we have these sort of matrilineal clans. And so these ones are going to be maintained and perhaps recarved. And this is probably carved by the mother because you can't marry someone who's in the same clan as you. So your father will be in a different clan. Though I mean, if there are other people uh, um, in the same clan who are a part of your band, then they could be the ones to carve the mask. That's why it's probably carved by the mother. And we can also think of other rituals that they would have. Let's go up here. What do we have? We have the matrilineal clans. We've got the territories. I do think interactions between other groups would probably be useful. So there could be rituals associated with other groups. Let's go. That would be important. So they could be. So we need rituals for interacting with other groups that are part of the clan and not part of the clan. So part of the polity, and or neighbors. I mean, and people. No, no. So you can have different rituals based on membership. And I mean, what sorts of rituals do we have today when we're interacting with people who are coming from different uh, different places, right? When we're interacting with people from different polities, one of the prominent ones is going through, this whole process of getting passports, going through customs and these kinds of things. Um, I mean, there's even little things, putting up signs like welcoming people to cities and those kinds of things. Like that's a piece of tangible culture that kind of demarcates transitions between different places and different senses of belonging, right? So we can think about those things as well. But here, seasonally, as they move through their territories, they are going to interact with various groups. So we could have these perhaps. So yeah, so seasonally, they're going to be coming in contact with different groups of people. And their foodways are very important. So they're probably going to have seasonal rituals. And I think going forward, I'm probably just going to focus on groups that are part of this interior. So if we go down to the map that we're working on, this is for the contemporary world. I mean, this won't necessarily reflect the world that the ancient ancestral Zaaleans are kind of growing up in. But, I'm thinking people who live inside this sort of more monsoonal interior, perhaps, up here and in this region, but probably maybe just focusing on in here would be useful. Yes, I accidentally made that disappear. Alliances. That could be important. Trade relations. So we need rituals for those sorts of things. There we go. And something that I have. So, do they change settlement patterns seasonally? No, not really. They tend to be quite dispersed. So they tend to be in small bands of about 1 to 3 dozen adults. I mean, probably one, yeah. People, I think, is fair, but probably like a dozen, like active adults. Is where you would want to be, and they're going to be living in their tarp structures for the entirety of the year. I mean, they're going to be, making, opening up more of those side panels. Panels is the word I was looking for. They're going to open up more of those side panels, or they're going to add more side panels depending on the weather. During certain times of year, they're probably going to be a bit more concentrated. So there could be a time of year when everyone, all the bands that are part of the same polity, who all share, who are all neighboring in territory and share these overlapping clan relations, they are going to be concentrated around a specific resource. It could be a lake or something like that during a time that is able to support them having a larger population. If we think about indigenous peoples of the plains in North America, the buffalo or the bison hunters, particularly the equestrian bison hunters, they were able to concentrate in very large numbers because of the rut. When the bison sort of concentrated where the bachelor and the bachelorette herds kind of came together for the rut. Um, that created a large concentration of food that allowed these groups to get together. Um, and it allowed, yeah. So, and that allowed for different kinds of different kinds of different scale of organization to form, because usually their organizations would be quite disparate. They would be spread out because all of the different bands would be traveling around separately. But then um, during part of the year, then they would all come together. Uh, and when they came together, they'd be able to, you know, interact in ways that they couldn't before. So, for example, each band for the Cheyenne, for example, each Cheyenne band had its own chief. And these chiefs inherited the position. The inheritance was not direct, uh, um, by lineage. It was based on character and a bunch of other things. And what those chiefs did was sort of negotiate consensus within their own communities. For most of the year, they were separate, but certain times of the year, primarily in like the summer and early autumn, they could come together. All of the bands would come together, and when that would happen, all of the chiefs would then hold councils. So they could shift how they were able. I mean, their governance structures would come together or sort of be more disparate depending on time of year, based on the food sources that were based on the affordances of their environment. So these people would probably be similar in that they're coming together. I mean, they don't have that same kind of like uh, they don't have that kind of office, that title at this point in time. Where were we? Intangible culture. There we go. But these would also be seasonal. So there can be a smaller version. Like, so when all the bands come together, they're going to have a ritual that renews their political relationship. I mean, for Canada and the United States, there was like the United States of Independence Day, which is, supposed to reinforce and like look back on the Declaration of Independence and kind of celebrate that moment. Though, I don't know how many people in the States actually like read their Declaration of Independence. And I think commonly they don't even read the grievances, which are the interesting parts. I think in a couple places I've probably made a offhand remark where, maybe people in the States should read those grievances for a bit of a vibe check to see how things are going. And then in Canada, you've got, it's Confederation Day, essentially, celebrating the confederation of all of a majority of the provinces. So, having these kinds of ceremonies that renew or, reenact the polity. And the thing is, these people don't need to engage in these kinds of like abstract celebrations because they don't have an imagined community. So an imagined community is a term from like Benedict Anderson, and he is talking about how contemporary states are built around this sort of imagined community. Often it's like the idea of the nation. So in Canada, the idea is that there's a Canadian nation. We are not going to meet all of the people who are a part of Canada. Um, so, we have to imagine this broader community who is connected by, the identity of being a subject of the Canadian state. So the kind of subjectivities that the Canadian state circulates for its citizens. That's translating it into the framework that I would use to describe it. These people don't need to do that. They don't have an imagined community because their polity is composed of a handful of bands, and those bands, they know every. Oh shoot! 1 second here. Specific. Sorry about that. I will edit that out for the next one. I am waiting on being contacted for an appointment. Anyway, so yeah, they are going to be coming together, and they are going to be meeting people on that regular basis. They're going to know everyone in their polity. Either they're going to be related to them, most likely, or they're going to be friends, or they're going to be acquaintances. They're going to know someone who knows someone, right? So they don't need to imagine their community. Their community is immediate and direct to them. Assuming Americans can read. Well, reading is becoming more a problem, especially like I notice with my students too. There is a lack of reading stamina. So the amount that folks can read, especially when I assign readings, like reading a chapter of a book. And like when I was in my undergrad, we could be expected to read 40 pages in our first or second year, a week per class. And that seems to be more of an ask these days, because I think it's the amount of time like sitting there and reading, because folks don't actually, younger people don't read for a long period of time anymore, and it is a skill that you have to build up. And then also being able to actually pick out things. So I do think like reading levels have gone down a bit, but people just aren't reading pretty consistently. And there's a lot of, like reading microblogs and stuff like that, like I guess Twitter and Bluesky and things like that. But then also like on TikTok and stuff, I know the captions pop up, but people aren't really reading those. They're just listening. So you don't really need to pick out stuff in the same way. Or if they want to read, yeah. Oh, you've got Imagined Communities. I would recommend it. It's definitely one of those foundational texts for, I don't know, just contemporary social sciences. It is a very important text. You'll find it referenced in anthropology and geography and sociology, political science, all over the place. I mean, even humanities, various like media studies and stuff like that. You'll see it referenced. $40 pages a week? Yeah, 40 pages a week. I mean, that's, I don't know, 2 chapters or 2 articles per week. I think that's more than reasonable. I mean, once you get into like upper year seminars or grad seminars, like you'll have to read a book in a couple weeks. So, but yeah, it's definitely changed now. So So yeah, they're going to renew a relationship. They're going to renew their relationship through feasting, engaging with large hunts. They do have these travois, where is it, that they're going to attach to their Saison griffins. So these guys are going to be pulling little things around. So these can be large hunts, or they can bring foods that have been preserved with them. And oftentimes, especially for, um, yeah, depending, because we are talking about these people who live in the interior region, and it's usually like the early part of the wet season that I guess for these folks would be their lean times, because the wet season is going to be what triggers a lot of new growth and things like that to happen. So like the end of the dry season, the beginning of the wet season is probably going to be the toughest time for them. So, meeting up uh, during the wet season. I mean, if it's pouring rain, there isn't going to be much that you're going to be able to do anyway. So that may be a good time for them to all get together and hang out under their little tents. They could link them together, or they could put them side by side, or maybe they'd want to. Yeah, I mean, putting them side by side would actually be symbolically significant considering this ritual we have where they have to perform it when they leave the tent. Um, so they're going to be eating preserved food that they have stored over the lean months. Um, they're canopies. We can call them canopies or whatever. There we go. And you could probably use spare panels to kind of essentially like turn one tarp. If you have like half a dozen of them, you could just kind of link them all together. Um, and in this situation, you could also coordinate larger hunts. And in this sort of early wet season, you also have a lot of new animals being born because this is when the new forage is growing. You've got green forage, young green um, herbs and foliage and stuff like that's going to be growing. I know that uh, Zalea with the metamorphflora, a lot of the plants are evergreen, though the evergreen leaves that grow to survive the dry summer are probably going to be more tough and fibrous than those that are growing at the beginning of the season. Those are going to be young and green, and they're going to be easier to consume and digest, and probably have more nutrients in them. So we're going to have a lot of a lot of animals are going to be born during this time. There we go. So there's going to be some good hunting that they can engage in. And then something else I was thinking about. Do I have it over there? Yeah, I'll go grab it 1 sec. So I have wampum belts here by Tehana Torrens. This is from Iroquois Publications. And inside here, we have the charter of the 5 clans, but then we also have the wampum. And folks have probably heard of wampum belts before, but these are the materialization of treaties and institutions, governing documents between different groups. So we have the 2-row wampum there. That was made originally between the Dutch and the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, but later applying to other settling groups as well. And what's important about these wampums is the materialization of these treaties, these institutions, is that they need to be maintained. And when the groups that engage with them are kind of brought together, when they gather, they bring out this material. And if the treaty is broken, if the relationship is broken, they also, symbolically, but also quite literally break the belt. And because the wampum is made out of a particular seashell, and that seashell needs, and those seashells, need to be boiled and softened and rolled into beads and those sorts of things. The strings as well take a lot of effort to make. Like, these are important documents that folks make. So I'm thinking about ways that we can actually materialize that culture. Hey, Goody Rictus. And I've already talked about these posts that they're going to be using, these poles that they use for their homes. So and I've also talked about the masks. So we could have new posts for the tarps are made every year when they all come together. That could be one thing. So they're making new posts that hold up the tarp, and maybe the ones on the inside are the younger of these posts, and then the ones on the outside are the older posts. That's one thing. Though I was also thinking that the posts on the inside of the canopies, just going back to this, the posts on the inside of the canopy, or the center post, could be, more associated with the stories and whatnot of those communities. Meanwhile, the ones on the outside could be more representative of non-Dovian communities. So that is one option. Another option is to have a mask that kind of embodies and materializes the political community. And each of these groups, each of the bands would have one of those masks. And that is what would, and that could be brought out during maybe the daily ritual or the coming of age ritual. The other thing that could happen is that everyone, so that could work. The other thing we can go in the other direction, which is that, these groups just don't wear masks when they are with one another. But I do think that they need some sort of way to kind of materialize their relationship. And, in reference to the wampum belts, um, there was a question from the SpecCon end panel that I was brought up in. And I think it was the panel asked by no, it was the question. I think it was the question that was asked by just a random member of the audience who was brought along by a conlanger. I remember that. And the question was like, if you use another culture as like a source or as a material, how do you, I guess, have engage with a certain degree of respect and like sort of avoid what was the term, like fetishizing or stereotyping that culture? And I think that's important to bring up too, because in this method here we do have references, right? So like, you do want to find good references, and that includes reading ethnographies. It includes reading, oral stories, and autoethnographies, from people within their own culture. It involves finding other kinds of works that kind of describe these things. I mean, I was referencing the wampum belts as like an interesting way to materialize political communities and treaties and relations between those communities, like governing documents and these kinds of things. Um, and one of those things is like kind of go to the core of what you're interested in with that idea, right? Like, I would not take like shell bead belts and put them into the world. Like, that would just be just taking this and putting it in. And that's, that is what I guess, sort of the negative appropriation that that people are, yeah, that's negative appropriation. That's taking something from a culture, and this is often going to be a culture that doesn't get to tell its own stories. Um, Cultures, that have historically been colonized, or subjugated by another group, right? Like, taking their cultural elements and incorporating it whole cloth into your own stories is kind of a fetishization. It also wouldn't work in this case, right? Because we haven't sort of built anything to kind of create a structure for that. That's why I immediately started talking about stuff we do have. We have the posts. I guess we have the leather panels as well. I did talk about there being symbols on these panels, especially on the top. So that could be there, something more like a fancy blanket or something like that. I think, what was it? There's I guess in Central Asia and the Caucasus and stuff like that, in West Asia as well. The question is, are you a rug on the floor or rug on the wall culture? So this could be something similar where they could have one of the leather panels on the wall that's, I guess, tattooed or painted or dyed, that has, these kinds of proto writing, these sort of images that are mnemonic devices on them. Yeah, just sort of taking a part of a culture wholesale and dropping it into your own world would be kind of a sort of negative appropriation. And that would be, it's kind of fetishistic, especially if you don't connect it, if it's a superficial thing, right? If you're not connecting what you're taking, or if you're not connecting something into your world, then it can often operate at that kind of superficial level. And then, of course, there's the stereotyping, and I think that comes from a lack of engaging in good references. I think I talked about that last time with, talking about like samurai, for example. Most people's understanding of samurai is filtered through, I don't know, Total War and The Last Samurai, and very contemporary ideas about, Bushido and things like that, maybe processed through contemporary anime and those kinds of things. But that is not the same as, what those systems were actually like. So if you just sort of stereotype samurai as being these sorts of honorable warriors or what have you, um, then it doesn't really, you're engaging in that stereotype, and it also doesn't delve deeper into the sort of cultures that you're looking at. And this is why I think Madeline used the example of that, of us talking about her clans in her book, because the Beast game, the Guardian clans that sort of protect the civilian farmers and stuff like that. Because she said she based those off of samurai, and I was like, well, samurai were not these sort of like beneficent sort of like warriors that protected their the peasants who were within their realms. Like, they were warrior elites who had the right to kill people who looked at them funny. And so if you're and I don't think that Madeline engaged in any of those things, because she was able to kind of take this idea of a warrior clan group and build it in her own world. And that's just what I keep getting to is, you want to take the core of the idea. Like, what is the actual thing that interests you from your references that you're looking at? Whether, you're looking at academic references, or whether you're looking at material culture, whether you're listening to, stories from a culture, or looking at contemporary genre fiction. Like, what is the core? Like, what is like the root of the idea that excites you? And what I'm bringing up here is not the belt in particular, though I think the belts are quite cool. It's this idea of materializing an institution as a way to, have a political effect, right? To kind of preserve it, have it to be something that you can point to and say, yeah, this is our agreement. This is what it means to be part of this group. This is something that we live by, and have it be a piece of being a tangible thing. So we have, here we go. So I'll sit. So yeah, there's going to be something tangible associated with this, but we'll see what it turns out to be. Sometimes this bumps around. It doesn't always stay where it's supposed to. So if you're not a part of the polity, because you're going on these seasonal rounds, right? So you're going the seasonal rounds, and if you're not a part of a polity, you're going to interact with people for trading and whatnot, and you're going to have neighbors. And I mean, you could have, I think the posts could work in that. So you could carve a wooden canopy post and kind of leave it in the landscape, in the place where you usually meet this other group. So that could actually create a space where you're interacting. It could kind of sanctify that kind of space, which could allow you to interact with other people. And because going back to these tarps or these canopies as spaces that are distinct from being under the open sky, where under the open sky, this is a very like fraught landscape where there are multiple different communities, and your band is just one group in a very dangerous landscape with many different communities that you need to mediate. your relationships with and negotiate with. So having a post to, canopy posts sort of hold up this space of your band where you are safe, carving a canopy post and leaving it in place for where you normally meet a group who you're not allied with may be useful. This is also going to be stuff that I'm going to have to paint and draw. So, okay. I think that works. And if you have a close relationship, then you could link your tents together. All right. I'm going to have, I'm going to go on a bit of a break and I'll have a think while I'm away for a few minutes on that. In the meantime, though, where is it? Nope. Yes, excellent. We are going to take our time, our daily time, as we usually do, to venerate the great green dragon, whose body is the ground beneath our feet, and whose tail is the bountiful sun from which all life comes. So you can take some time to venerate the great green dragon as you see fit, and I'll be back in about 5 minutes. All right, and I am back. I hope everyone has venerated the sun as they do. I'll probably go out. Yeah, I'll probably go out because what is it? There's Pride in the Park, and I volunteer at a um, used book at a used everyone at the used bookstore volunteers, but it's a volunteer run used bookstore, and we have a table at Pride, so I may go out there. It is a nice sunny day. What do we got? I can't believe you actually made this a part of your con culture. The Great Green Dragon. Oh, and for I guess folks who are new, who are watching this afterwards, the dragons and griffins are not like traditional dragons and griffins. I definitely recommend watching the Arukian Wet Winter Savannah episode, like a mainline video, and then the griffins I detailed with Bib, who was around here earlier, and we sort of developed the griffins, which are land croc looking guys who purposefully resemble dinosaurs in many cases because they're archosaurs. I mean, they come from the same cloth, but these critters are more, amphibian-ish. So, oh, the praise the sun thing. Yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, there's going to be a culture that's more recent, more contemporary in Dove that's going to do this. But I definitely wanted to include it. And I'm quite happy with the design still. I do think I want 12 little tassels coming off it. I think Kate mentioned at one point that there's 13. And I think that was just me making a shape on the fly. Wasn't really planned to have 13, though I could make it something important. I think it turned out pretty good, and I do like the shape of the dragon being all contorted like that. I think that has a certain aesthetic to it. Yeah, here's an example of a griffin. There we go. I need to import the griffins into Obsidian so I can, and the other critters, so I can kind of open them up. I haven't put all the images in here yet. Oh, I think the praise the sun thing was one of the first things we came up with, and we've just been sort of developing on that religion since then. And see, we have a little ritual praising this, venerating the great green dragon, golden-tailed green dragon, I should say. Not the only kind of green dragon, as you will soon see. Oh yeah, and we're an hour in now. Should have done this sooner, but remember to like and subscribe if you haven't already. You can also, if you'd like, you can support Lands Unknown by leaving comments on the videos and hyping if you can. It's a great way to, show the algorithm that the videos are worth watching or worth someone's interest. All right, so I've given this some thoughts, and there are a couple options I could go with. So there could be the tarp, like you could have leather panels, and these leather panels that are going to be hanging sort of from the side, and these could detail so these leather panels could be could have images on them that act as mnemonic devices. I don't know how to spell, do I? Aha! Yes, I do. Um, so they could be leather panels. We could also do one of these posts. So there could be a post where they meet that is repaired and periodically remade, and this post communicates their story. And it does come from the posts that hold up their tents. So it'd be more of a slender thing. I'm also I'm and when I'm thinking about the design of these posts, I am hesitant to make it stylistically look like house posts of the Pacific Northwest. I think that's something that people would very quickly go to. So I'm going to want to develop a style that is distinct, and I want it to be shared across like the masks and the posts and those sorts of things. I think some of the early masks will definitely be a bit more um, imitating life. So this one looks like a Zaalean griffin. So here's, I mean, partially domesticated griffin, I suppose, who's hanging out with her here. Just two gals surveying, this valley here. But yeah, so I do want to link that together because I certainly don't want to lift that kind of style in line with what I said before. And if you have more references and you're aware of these things, then you can make choices to avoid doing that earlier on. I think the wooden post makes sense because if I pick something like a leather panel or if I pick something like a mask, then would each band have a mask or a panel? That seems like a lot of effort. If there's only one panel or one mask, that would probably lead to a kind of inheritance, perhaps. And that could, someone has to keep it. Someone has to keep it maintained and repaired, which doesn't, I think in this culture, in this society, it would not be inherently hierarchic, though I think it could be in certain cultures, certain of these cultures. And I was thinking of calling these folks the faceless as a sort of, in the same way that the Dovians who are coming across from the, I guess, from this perspective, from the Northeast, they're coming across the archipelago that connects Zalea to Ilea. They are currently called the wingless, or I guess the proto-wingless. These people could be the faceless or the proto-faceless because they wear their masks all the time. I think that's a very fun conceit. And as these cultures develop, wearing masks can be an interesting component to the culture. I'm also thinking of like the ways that certain kinds of hat are pretty prevalent in some cultures. So like I don't know, like rice hats are pretty prevalent, across Southeast Asia, South Asia, East Asia, different layers of society, of stratified societies have different hats, to have different rice hats, those kind of flat woven hats. And they style them, different cultures style them differently, but they're also styled and use different materials based on your level in the social stratification. So that could be interesting. If you have masks, the more in stratified societies, the more common people could wear more simple masks, not simple, they could still be pretty well ornamented, but they'd probably be made out of like wood and other commonly accessed materials. Maybe the colors would be, things that are more easy to access. Meanwhile, if you're an elite, then your mask could be made out of more um, luxury goods and have different colors and things like that. So that could be a direction to take it. So they could be the faceless in the same way that the others could be the wingless, and the ways that those two societies interact in Zalea could create some interesting, an interesting mosaic, especially if the wingless, are more coastal, and then maybe they penetrate into, maybe they expand into certain areas and interact and assimilate groups along certain riverways and those sorts of things. Maybe certain wingless groups include masks as well. Maybe the faceless groups sort of take on the wingless moiety system as a way to like build relations and interact and these kinds of things. I mean, there are a lot of ways that you can intersect these cultures, which links into one of the other questions that was asked. I think it was, what's sort of the best way to plan cultures on a map over long periods of time? And I think it was specifically related to like a grand strategy game. Um, uh, where they wanted to have like hundreds of years of history before the game started. Like I'm thinking of like a paradox game, like a U4 or something like that. Um, and there's also like a fantasy mod that I've played a little bit of. I think it's Abnar or something. Oh my goodness, I'm gonna have to check. U4 and Binar. Okay, I was close. Where you have like, hundreds of years of history for the actual strategy game itself, and then there's hundreds of years before that. But like, how do you plan on, putting cultures sort of on the map? Um, and what I usually do is have these sort of culture groups and, plot their migrations over time to like, change different spaces. I do have an idea that I do want the wingless to be prominent in Arukia, and they're going to collect some things from the faceless. But they do travel over time, they overlap each other, they develop, they're going to create some frictions. But I think doing the diachronic method, having some ideas, but then playing it out allows you to create a certain patchwork of cultures that we see, right? Like even if we think of the European subcontinent, where yes, there's we have like a little pocket of pre-Indo-European, like Basque. Then you have kind of at the far west, northwest, you've got some Celtic languages from previous Indo-European expansion and settlement. Then you have Germanic and Romance languages that have spread into it. And then in the east, you have Slavic groups, and then you've got, Finno Ugritic, like Hungarian came in, kind of splits them apart. So kind of like having that and sort of playing out these migrations and movements of people. And of course the movement of language and the movement of people is not the same. While in some places we do see groups of people moving in and bringing a new material culture and supposedly language with them, but in other places the material culture changes with very little genetic change. So these are always things that you can keep into consideration. But yeah, I would definitely recommend a more diachronic method, just having some culture areas as sort of urheimats, like, homelands for those cultures, and then moving them over time, spreading them, developing them, mixing them with other groups, helps you create a medley. So we got the institutions, tangible culture. Great. Yeah, I think I'm going to do the wooden posts. I think the wooden posts could be interesting. And I would like the challenge of making sort of distinct posts. I'm also reminded of the Shiger idol. I don't know if folks know about that. Let me add that to my. So this is a very old wooden sculpture. Um, where's a good? So this is a very old wooden sculpture. It's about 12,000 years old. Um, Copy image. Uh, Clothing, lithics. Hey, there we go. How many do we have here? Three? Three. Great. So here we have the Shiger idol with his little surprise face at the top. And we have all of these intricate carvings going up the idol. And so wooden monuments, like posts, are quite old in, um, you know, human culture. It's probably one of the earliest forms of monumentality. If we think about Stonehenge, for example, there was a wooden monument, this sort of field of posts that preceded Stonehenge in that region as well. There's a really cool exhibit that came to the local, like the RBC, the Royal British Columbia Museum, that kind of recreated that monument uh, in in the exhibit, which I thought was super cool. I'll see if I can find an example of that. Yes, so timber circles are something that was also quite common. Um, I don't know. Yeah, so you usually have like earthworks, and then have a like a sort of circle of timbers, like wooden posts around it. Uh, and you can find similar structures, um, not just in the sort of Atlantic archipelago, so like the English Isles and stuff, but you can also in Ireland. You can also find it in Germany and the Netherlands and Denmark and stuff like that too. Where's a and I think we would be remiss if we didn't think these were um, I think we would be remiss if we didn't think that these were also carved. These were also, uh, they may not have been, but we should consider that they were carved. Oh, here we go. Here we go. This is, they don't actually have the posts in this. Oh, they have this is an illustration by Peter Lorimer. So let's grab that. Let's see if it'll let me actually grab it. Well, that's frustrating. It doesn't let me grab the artist's reconstruction. It's very interesting just looking at the one thing that's there. All right. Here we go. Here we go. All right. So I don't know if we'll keep this in the thing. So here is by this is by Peter Lorimer. I believe it was for um, English Heritage, and you can see based on where the archaeologists have found the post holes, they've sort of constructed this, I guess, this forest of timbers. We can see here though that they are not sculpted in any way; they're just kind of there, hanging out. So yeah, wooden monumentality. Wooden monuments go back a pretty far way. There are also a variety of different cultures that use wooden posts. I think if I could remember, there is a I think there are like Korean posts. Yes, they're called Jangsun. Let's put those in too. Because we're building up our references, right? Copy image. These guys look great. There we go. Look at that. Aren't those cool? So these mark village boundaries. They frighten away malevolent spirits and things. They also embody like protector spirits. I think the term is tutelary spirits. So that is also quite cool. Let's see if I can remember how to spell that. It's okay. All right. I believe it was Peter Lorimer. Yep, Peter Lorimer. Great. And then that is the sugar idol. And you always want to label your stuff so you can. I mean, I know it's the sugar idol, but and that was found in Siberia, so North Central Asia, right? And the people who built this, importantly, the people who built this would have been in like an egalitarian hunter-gatherer society in Siberia, probably hunting large herbivores, right? So these people were not living in a state-like society or one that was, and we don't have evidence that they would be living in one that was heavily stratified, like certain cultures on the Pacific Northwest coast, or like the Calusa or something like that. So monuments and these sorts of monumental structures, even when they're made of wood, don't necessarily mean that a culture is, heavily stratified or hierarchical or anything like that. Can I collapse this? Hey, there we go. Wonderful. Let's do posts. Let's say they'll gather around that post in a circle. And in that way, they could probably create, the tarps can be connected. So yeah, they're tarps are connected, creating an inner area, creating an inner field around the main post, around their polity post. Let's call it a polity post. An inner common, say. Of course, you're under the open sky, but it would be, it would be connected by all of these tarps. So you'd probably want this to be on a hill or something like that so people could see it. You also want it to be an area that won't flood. So yes, being on a hill, being on an area that's well drained. And when all the bands come together, they renew their relationship around this post. Let's do... Yay, great. Oh, there we go. Great. And so we could also have it that when... Okay, so we have these rituals. When you're part of the polity, let's bring that to a higher level. Okay. And they can have ceremonies in that space. So they can have ceremonies in that common space around the post, including feasting. Including feasts, not feats, feasts. And let's move the time period up here more. There we go. Great. So if you're part of the polity, you gather around this tangible object, which will be a skinny, kind of tall wooden post. I mean, they may... Other posts may accumulate over time. There may be an accumulation of posts. Maybe if a new clan joins the polity or new bands join the polity, then there could be new posts for that. But this is, this space is for kind of, reaffirming that relationship, this political relationship between these bands and clans. So then we have what we do when people are not a part of the polity. We're going to be having these seasonal interactions, and they are going to happen near these wooden these wooden posts. And you're going to be carving them with that group, and you're going to be maintaining it together, and you're going to be regularly meeting at that spot, and it can sanctify that area. If you have a close relationship, it can be a place where you can, link your tarps together, but it can also just be a place for trade. You could also have these posts to represent agreements to not fight over resources, to share resources. Um, uh, okay, let's go back here a sec. Okay. They could also be peace treaties, for example. They can be on the borders between where certain bands in their territories or where between polities have had conflict, so they can resolve those treaties. And, if you're seasonally meeting with those people, you can reaffirm your commitment to the treaty. So we can do that. And there should be there should also be a ritual for welcoming people into your tarp. And that's why I think there should be a mask that sort of represents the band or the polity. For Devians who are not a part of the band. Yeah, and the mediator, it could be like a sort of like hospitality spirit or something. Not, I mean, it's the embodiment. It's the mask is materializing the clan, and then they would negotiate with each other. So as a part of this ceremony, the mediator masks for the bands. Vaporization ritual, yes. Yeah, we don't have vaporization has not really caught on in the whatchamacallit, in the literature, I don't think. The mediator that each band come together. There we go. Now, I think this could definitely be vaporization ritual is just a random thing to say. Well, I'm sure there are rituals where, I don't know, would smoking on things or burning various herbs and stuff, that could be a vaporization ritual. Yeah, in ceremony when they first meet. To sanctify. Then the masks are taken off. Yeah, because I can imagine if most of the time you're outside, you're wearing a mask. Being outside, surrounded by these, by the tarps with the post in the middle and not having to wear a mask. I mean, that would be a significant marked difference for the way that they're experiencing space, and I think that could be quite interesting. Right, and then we need to go back down here. Whoop, okay. Do, 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 do. Here we go. Form of prayer needs to be brought up. Yeah. Just organizing these things. Great. So for protection. There we go. And they're going to be petitioning the mediators of the non-Davian communities. And I think in this way, other let's go back up here. So in this way, other bands are going to be is this a top layer? Yeah, sure. Other bands and polities are going to be interpreted within the framework of the broader sort of animal community. So, other band. So, like, if you saw a band, if you saw like a herd of Tripon griffins, which is what these ones are, is functionally a band. Is a band. Is imagined as a band. So then, if you were to go to war essentially with another, yeah, I mean the interactions with these sorts of non-human um, communities, quote unquote, is also then sort of like analogous to interactions between different Dovian groups. Okay, and I think that kind of builds it to filling in this other ritual bit we have here, which are seasonal rituals connected to their foodways. So, based on what season it is, they are going to have different taboos and they are going around what they're allowed to hunt. Um, and these are going to be practical things. So, like in this season, we don't hunt this kind of griffin um, because maybe they're mating in that season, and you want to maintain the population, so you don't hunt them. And some of them can be, just sort of by analogy, right? Like, if you don't hunt um, yellow crested blue dragons in a certain season because, that's when they're um, minding their eggs or their wormlings. Uh, and, you don't want, you want the parents to be able to raise the wormlings, and then you can hunt them in a different period or something like that. They're blue. They're the azure griffins, which are like the huge sauropod like mega herbivores. The azure griffins have blue scales, so maybe those aren't hunted during that time period as well, right? Like that's the kind of thing. So you can they can make there can also be things by analogy. Oh, hey McCain, how's it going? Getting ready for the World Building Festival, doing more economic anthropology. I believe we did economic anthropology. Still got to catch up on the SpecCon videos. The SpecCon videos are a great time. I had a lot of fun with them. What are some other taboos? Can also just be, you know, They can also be like anecdotal, for example, like you know, one of our ancestors, great grandparent, uh, um, tried to hunt X uh, during this time, and tragedy befell him. I said him, yeah. So okay, tragedy befell them. So we don't hunt X during this time either. Right? So you can have uh, that kind of stuff as well. And because these seasonal rituals are going to be very much related to the territory, and the territory is going to be passed down um, and inherited um, patrilineally, I believe. Not inherited patrilineally, it's going to be patrilocal, yes, because it's the adult men who are, going to be the ones who are living in the territory. Meanwhile, I guess usually I suppose the women are going to be uh, marrying out of the community. And here, like, marrying is, like, I know today marriage is very imagined as, like, state based, like, official institution. It has a lot of formal institutionalizations and these kinds of things, and there's all sorts of religious rules and whatnot around it. But here, when we're talking about marriage, we're talking about, the purposeful partnership between uh, two people in order to engage in, like, social reproduction. And I'm sure for the faceless, the AAZ people, uh, because they don't have gendered roles, because everybody is expected to participate in subsistence, because there's only going to be like a dozen adults. Everyone goes out hunting when you go out hunting. Everyone's going to be participating in foraging. Um, it, it, you could have like, same sex partnerships. I mean, there are probably going to even be uh, partnerships where one would expect children to be produced and they are not produced, and that is, these things are probably fine, and these things are probably within the realm of normativity within the culture. um and if you have uh partnerships, marriages between, I don't know, two men or two women, they could adopt. They could adopt across between clan lines. They could adopt and help out within their own band as well. Um, and they could also, be providing extra care. They can be, contributing to a community. And when we're thinking about subsistence communities, it's usually when you have any of these extended households, because the band has, a few dozen people in it. When you have adults, like when you have most of your band as adults, that's when you're going to be the most productive. When you have more children, uh, your band is going to need more resources. So you do want to have more adults to be able to supply that. But if you have more adults than children, then you're going to be able to have more surplus, and things can be a bit easier for you. So, you know, you do need to engage in social reproduction. I mean, there do need to be new members of the community um, to, reproduce it and keep that society going. But they're not necessarily concerned with growing their population too significantly or anything like that. Um, Oftentimes in pre-modern, pre-industrial, let's say, in pre-industrial societies, like, each uh, each couple that's like producing children is, on average, like, it's like what, 2.1 So they're replacing their population and then a little bit extra over the entire society. So the actual growth of the society like isn't that large. And these people, as we've established, have a very small, relatively small population. They're quite isolated, um, you know, based on their lifestyles, based on um, their forms of subsistence. They're not going to be, you know, seeing that kind of existential population growth anyway. But yeah, so they may be more concerned with maximizing the number of adults in a group and creating that surplus enable that helps them survive in a very harsh environment, and they're probably not going to be as putting as much emphasis on uh you know having as many children as possible that we may see in like farming cultures and whatnot. And we do see in various hunter-gatherer cultures as well, uh, is purposefully causing infant mortality. Uh, One of the main barriers to population growth was high infant mortality. Yeah, totally. High infant mortality. And a big part of that too was that you had lean years. And when you're sorting out who gets fed, it is the active adults within the community who are going to be able to kind of reproduce society, who tend to get precedence. We have a variety of cultures where um, there are hunter-gatherer cultures where if it's a lean year, if it's a bad season and a child is born, they may just leave that child, that baby, um, outside to sort of be taken by the elements, for example. And in those cultures too, they do have ideas about, oh, well, the soul just, we're not ready for that soul yet. We're not ready for that person. They will go back and then, return at a later time. So it may be a physical death, but it is not, a a spiritual death, right? Or a soul death or anything like that. Um, so, this is a regrettable thing that many pre-industrial cultures had to deal with, but it is a reality that, if you're world building, it could be something that you want to consider. So, having a lot of adults and having those adults being able to create a surplus of food or a comfortable amount of food that they are able to actually maintain having children to then reproduce that society, uh, you know, that'll be their primary goal. So, you know, if yeah, so that's what they're going to primarily be concerned about. Um, oh yeah, and all that goes to say, you're probably going to have partnerships. If partnerships, whether they are, same-sex partnerships or not, because you could have, I guess, a man and a woman have a relationship and not produce children. That is not something that would be taboo or necessarily shamed within these cultures, because it's not their primary concern, and they may not even think that there are also cultures where they don't associate um, like pregnancy and things like that with sex. There are like other things that cause it. So that could be something to explore as well. There are often attempts at deliberate anti-conception too. That's not always successful. Yeah, yeah, that's also true. Um, and then when there's also in studied hunter-gatherer societies, there is a tendency for um, women to be breastfeeding longer, and that also means that uh, they're not, you know, they're not going to be ready to conceive as quickly. Because if you stop breastfeeding quicker, then that you can become pregnant. Then you can become pregnant quicker. Um, hunter gatherers also tend to be more active and other things as well. And there's I've read some scholarship that says that this would be create less opportunities to become pregnant. There's just physically, so there's differences in lifestyle that could contribute to that too. In addition to actively trying to prevent conception. But these communities are trying to manage how many members are in it based on what they can support. And sometimes that means that bands would break apart into smaller groups. Sometimes that means that members of the band may move from one territory to another territory based on how productive that territory is in a certain time period. Um, and, if all else fails, then sometimes it means that certain people get less food than others. Um, and these are calculations that these communities are going to have to make. Yeah, here we go. This is where we were. Green Parent tried to hunt X during its time, and tragedy befell them, so we don't hunt X either. Yes, great. So it's because how these people work is that they have a territory, but they move on these sort of seasonal rounds through. They go to parts of the territory where they expect that are the most productive in that season. So, if they are going to be hunting the Trapon griffins that live in more like open herblands in a certain time of year, then they're going to go to a spot then they're going to go a spot where they can hunt those. And they're going to have usually a spot that they visit pretty consistently, although it may shift over time based on microclimate things, changing soils, the movement of rivers, that kind of jazz, or even like the changes in like the animal communities, right? Like in this case, a green dragon may establish a territory where there wasn't a green dragon territory before, and that can cause the biogeography to change as other animals respond to the movements of each other. So that can cause things to move around too. But that being said, in those areas, there's going to be one of these wooden posts. And these posts represent I guess we can say the treaties with the non-Davian communities. And this, when I'm thinking about this as well, I'm also inspired by was it cannibal metaphysics? Let me find that one sec. So this is actually this is univocal. I don't think they're around anymore, but they were a small press that made these very nice sort of artisanal handmade books that were distributed by UMP, University of Minnesota Press. Yeah, we can see how nice they are. They've got a lot of great texture here. Thank you, McCain. Yes, we've got a lot of nice books, and we also have a lot of llamas. And I think I've got a Gorgonopsid up there too. I don't know if you can see the Gorgonopsid in the corner there. The Gorgonopsid is one of my favorites up there. Greetings from Poland. Greetings, Jake. You're gonna like this episode, Jake. You came right for the cannibal metaphysics. So yeah, Eduardo Viveros de Castro talks about and sort of theorizes an anthropology where there's a distinction that was made that he kind of develops from where when he tells this sort of anecdote where when the Spanish or the Portuguese came to South America, when the Portuguese and the Spanish came to South America, they wanted to know whether the indigenous peoples had the same souls as them, because they're through this Christian metaphysic. The local indigenous peoples wanted to know if they possessed the same kind of body. And this is because in this metaphysic, the souls are interpreted to be essentially analogous. So different animal communities, different non-human communities have the same souls, but they have different bodies. And so, in the book, he talks about how, we may see a tapir wallowing in some mud, right? So the tapir's in mud. We see the tapir in mud. But from the tapir's perspective, in this metaphysic, it is instead having, a luxurious bath. It is bathing itself. We may see a jaguar, eating a caiman from our perspective as humans, but from the jaguar's perspective, it is, sitting down to, a nice meal, essentially. So the cannibal metaphysic, as De Castro kind of lays out, has this idea that all creatures essentially possess the same sort of internal structures and are analogous, but their bodies are different. So in this, what we're getting at is that different communities of different creatures, are treated as sort of possessing the same kind of they're all interpreted as belonging to the same side of political system. So yes, griffins and dragons, different types of critters, look different and they have different groups, but they all of their groups are somewhat analogous. And so that kind of comes from engaging in this kind of theorization. And Univocal was quite cool because they also engaged with, they also published a lot of Francois Laurel and other weird stuff, I would say. Things on the fringes of philosophy, I would argue. Do I have my little notes in here? No, I made notes in a separate document for this. I had a phase where I didn't want to actually write in the books. I didn't want to make notes in the books. And I wrote on separate pieces of paper. And then what happened was I would misplace those pieces of paper. So then I entered a phase where I started just writing in the books. One sec. example of that? Oh, yeah. There we go. An example of that, just for fun, is with dogs at the end of life, which is kind of like a post-humanist philosophy book. I think it's written by like a humanities and legal scholar. But, you can see that I have definitely changed my mind when it comes to writing in books. And I do highlighters and these little frilly things on top. Yes, marginalia is an age-old tradition. And I've become more comfortable with marginalia. And I think I think it's quite fun. Where do we go? Jake invading Poland. Yes, my llamas are your owls. I would agree. And I do like llamas. I got llamas. I got alpacas. Got a big assortment of them. I have more up top. I don't know if they can be seen at the moment. Let's see if I can angle it up. There we go. There's all the llamas up there. They're always looking down on me. Relatively dispersed trend. Like all over the place, people were into llamas. I got a picture of a big llama. There was a really big llama at a street fair. My wife and I went to on Thursday, and that was always great. There was also a llama. They had different colors on their, I guess, their necks and their chests. And I wanted one that had a similar color to my beard because I thought that would have been cute, but didn't grab it. There's also a nice example of somewhere in Central Africa of people taking branches from trees, being like taking a person's arms. Oh, okay, just coolest book. I should check that one out. Yes, same. I found that as well. I think I became more militant about marginalia and underlining in my PhD. I think that stuff was from my master's, and I think that was a lot chiller. Winamp. I don't know what Winamp is. Asteroid impact released 1.5 quadrillion tons of TNT. Ooh. Or 5.2 million years ago. Huh. Where do we have? Australia. Great. I was going to ask. Ah, it's in New South Wales. Oh, it's suggested that it's that it's an asteroid impact. But yeah, it's probably on a really old Craton. They got some old ones out there in Australia. Yeah, I guess The Conversation wrote something about it a couple years ago. That'd be really cool. It's always neat when we find older old audio software and their icon was a llama and their slogan is it really whips the llama's ass. No, I was not familiar with that. Seems like they have a lame logo now. Apparently, there's Winamp Heritage. That's fun. All right. Let's just finish out this bit and then I'll call it. because we did quite a bit today. I said we do rituals and we develop the relationships more, and we have in fact done that. See, I was kind of I was using a Mac, but I was using VLC probably in the, I don't know, 2007 onward. Because I was one of those folks who would download the fan subs of anime and download um, the torrents of new episodes that would be put up like a day or two after they aired in Japan, and I guess the fan subs took about a week, and then use VLC to kind of splice them together. It was work back then. Now you just got Netflix and simulcasts and things. Yeah, yeah, that's good. All right, so wooden posts in the area is frequented during seasons, which uh, for example, not the black and green griffins, the black and green dragons. There we go. Yeah, and then this would be like the taboos and things like that as well. So far, I've been focusing on fauna because I've done more work on the fauna. I think for the next main video on the channel after the Northern Lowland Rainforest one comes out, will be about flora on Arukia, but going through the different kinds of flora and building that out more, I think will help bring more to that and how I want to treat that within the faceless. Let's take all that and put it over here. There we go. Okay. Was there anything else? Anyone ask any other questions that during the world thing that I was brought up in? Oh yeah, and I guess the last one that I was brought up in, I think that was the first one that was mentioned for the SpecCon panel. Somebody was asking about when people are working on projects, probably like story projects, so like books and stuff like that. They said like, is the plot for the world or is the world for the plot? I do think that there are good ways to go about both. So, if you're building a story and you have a story that you would like to tell, then building your world out to kind of support the story is really important, but doing it in a way that isn't superficial because, I think there are a decent amount of stories where the world isn't really a character in the story. It just provides sort of set dressing and backdrop to what's happening. And this can also lend to the sort of called like, fetishization and superficial elements of taking inspiration from cultures that I mentioned before, right? Like if you choose, like if your story could be set in, you know, if you could have written your story that ended up being set in like an Elizabethan England, if you could have written it in the so-called Wild West and it would remain unchanged, besides people wearing cowboy hats, then I don't think the world building there is present. Um, if you're building the world as a character and its influence in the story, I think that can be done quite well. What I like to do, and I think what Madeline mentioned in there, is to build the world and build conflicts and build interesting conflict into the world and then write the story from that. So, building in all of these different um, all these different institutions and organizations, detailing all of the ways that these communities can interact with one another, can create a lot of fertile ground for plots to occur, for conflict. Uh, so yeah, I would. So I think that's something that's interesting that can come from, and also like you can also generate more novel and compelling stories from the world if you start from these things. I think often, people can create stories that are familiar to them in the context that they exist in the contemporary world, or that they're inspired by, through their engagements in fiction and stuff like that. Less so from the actual settings that they're in. So, like, what kinds of stories could be created from a world that's different than our own? And I think that's where, like, if you're doing speculative fiction, you know, telling those kinds of speculative stories kind of require worlds to create to support them. What you probably spoke as much as that panelist during your presentation. Yeah, I mean that's fine though. Are you using Obsidian for organizing this? Yes, I just started using Obsidian. Um, I was using Evernote, but they changed the price from like $80 to 300 or something because of all the so-called AI features that they are adding. And I couldn't justify that. And Obsidian was using um, their paid thing where you can actually like share it across um, all of your different stuffs. Anyway, that was just $80 and it allowed for everything, as much as you'd like to share. And I can share multiple vaults and all that kind of stuff. So I have a vault for my academic stuff. I have a vault for my personal world building project. I got a vault for Dove. I got a vault for, just random notes and things like that. It is excellent. And I also really like the little icon because it's, like a lithic, which I think is cool. Speaking of simulcasts, I feel like episodes of Jadugar. Oh, that sounds cool. What's that? Oh, yes. I have heard about this manga. They made it a show. Oh, it's on Netflix. No, no, it's not. That is a movie. Oh, it's on Crunchyroll. All right. Khwarezm. Yeah. Yeah. I think it's more like Mongolic. At least that's what I remember kind of from the manga. But yeah, I think it is in West Asia and Central Asia. I'll have to remember. But I would be interested in watching that one. I think that one would be cool. It's just so little time to actually watch things now. I think I definitely consumed a lot of media when I was in my undergrad and in my master's, but now, there's it's not as much time to kind of get into new stuff, so I have to be quite picky. But I thought that is something that would be interesting. We only have the first 3 episodes. Well, that's cool. Yeah, I'll definitely check that out. I think what I was watching recently was, and I'm watching it in little chunks. I think it's The Boy and the Heron, because I never got around. Uh, yeah, I never got around to watching it when it came out a few years ago. So I've been watching that in like 20-minute chunks over last week or so. All right, so what do we do this time? This time, reiterated the method, going back, gathering references, you know, solidifying your basics as a foundation, helping that inform it so you can kind of build off it. And then going back and forth between the tangible, intangible, and intangible culture, because as you develop those things, it's going to inform your, it's going to inform these structures that you're developing. We haven't done as much about the economic stuff. We'll probably do that next time we come back to it. I mean, this one doesn't have a money economy, obviously. I mean, we've done a decent amount about the subsistence and things, but we haven't gotten into details. We built up the rituals. That's kind of what I wanted to go over, kind of developing these whatchamacallits, developing their institutions and how they relate to one another through ritual, how they renew their relationships, which is very important for these folks. Talked about them as, not an imagined community, as a kind of direct community, because they would know everyone who is a part of their polity, since it consists of half a dozen bands and each band has, a few dozen people in it. Talked about their expanding this kind of daily ritual and how it would interact with their more, important celebrations and things. Talked more about the significance of their tarps and creating liminal spaces and sacred spaces, and I've been using this, the tarp and living under it as like a domestic space, because I think that's a decent shorthand, but it doesn't really have the same tenor to it. Talked about the posts and making the posts a more important part of the culture. They're not just a thing that holds up their tents here. It's also something that they use for materializing different institutions and treaties and those sorts of things, which is very important because these are non-literate people. I mean, they use certain images and glyphs or symbols for sort of like mnemonics. So it's like memory devices. So if you tell a story and you have these images and things, or if you have rules and taboos and you have certain carvings, you're taught to associate those rules with those carvings so that you can remember them and pass them on and teach them, which is probably something that they'd be doing pretty heavily during the wet season when they are gathered together, or when they're, when they're gathered together. I could see that being an important time for sharing those kinds of stories. And so, using these posts as ways to commemorate, treaties and relationships and senses of belonging in the landscape, geography, in the landscape, creating that sort of commemorative landscape is super important. And, as a part of that, we also looked at some other references, like Jangsung in Korea, which look quite cool. An artist's rendition of the wood henge that was kind of like nearby or predated Stonehenge. And then we also looked at the Shigar idol as well. So we're constantly going back and getting references for the stuff that we're working on. And then we also kind of, through talking about the seasonal rituals, and because we incorporated the masks of the mediators last time, kind of pulled on cannibal metaphysics from De Viveros to incorporate all of those different non-Dovian animal communities as sort of analogous political groups that they have relationships with. And so the seasonal wooden posts that they have that dot the landscape that they use to, celebrate their sort of seasonal festivities are also ceremonies where they reaffirm their commitment to their different hunting practices and taboos and these kinds of things. So I thought that was pretty yeah, that was pretty good. We got a lot of stuff done here. We're shifting out from oh yeah, I have like an unfinished work. Where'd that go? Untitled? Yeah. So, just kind of working on that as well. I may take another stab at this. This is my second try doing this, and I'm happier with this base layer, doing all the local colors, but we'll see what it looks like when it's done. Economics, you say? Yes. Thinking about the trade relations, thinking about the sort of seasonal economy that they have, their preservation techniques, thinking through like luxury goods and some other stuff like that. Sounds good. Excellent. Yeah. So thank you everyone for venturing into lands unknown with me today. If you haven't already, like and subscribe would be great help for the channel. Comments and hypes and things on videos is also a wonderful way to show support and engagement with the algorithm. And if you can always become a member on Patreon, where you can get sneak peeks at new content, behind the scenes looks at what's in the pipeline and other things that are going on related to the channel, as well as seeing new episodes early. And this Northern Lowland Rainforest episode is going to come out. It's going to be released for Explorer tier patrons in the next week or so. So if you want to get it in advance, you can sign up for that tier. Anyway, thank you so much. Next week, the Boo Boys, Jake and Miles, are going to come by, and we're going to have a change of pace, and we are going to be developing Booba World, the Boobaverse, and doing the manual climate method for their continent that they got. So that'll be excellent, and you'll get to see me go through the process of making the manual world. And I think we've got 6 or 7 weeks set aside to do that. And we're going to be presenting it at the World Building Festival, which will be quite cool. Yes, very cool. So if everyone is excited for that change of pace, going back to, physical geography, world building, then yeah, I look forward to seeing everyone next week, and hope you have a good one. Bye.